So Jesus got baptized, then tempted, then he called the disciples. And so in Matthew's gospel, we're now into Jesus teaching them, because that's the next part. You just can't be expected to just know it, so Jesus has to teach. There are kind of two parts of one thing, that you are called, and then you are qualified, taught, prepared to be that disciple because you are called. So we are going to get that now until Lent starts. So we get what's called the Sermon on the Mount. We're all going to be taught by Jesus. But Jesus expects you to put it into practice. That's the only way you really get qualified. If you just hear it, you think, that's sweet. Jesus must apply to somebody else. Not me. But no, the Sermon on the Mount is meant for all of us, even if initially we don't feel qualified. Like when Jesus called you, you might think, you got the wrong person. At least that was my experience with the call to priesthood. I think, nope, got the wrong guy. I heard a cardinal interviewed the other day, and they said to him at one point in the interview, well, when did you want to be a priest? And he said, I didn't want to be a priest. And I think, great, now we have a cardinal saying it too, not just me. I didn't want to be a priest. God did. God wanted me to. And then it's been a wonderful, wonderful life. The cardinal said that, and I would agree. It's been a wonderful life. But did I think, I want to do this? No. People kept pointing it out, saying, you should be a priest. My girlfriend's not going to like that at all. She didn't. Even when I finally gave in and said, okay, I'm going to go to that next part to be qualified. I'm going to go to the seminary, test it out, see how it is. So, okay, God's calling, now I'll do this next part. And it was much better than I expected. I don't know what I was expecting. I thought a bunch of weird people hanging around together, maybe praying a lot, but I wasn't exactly sure what was going to be there. But once I got there, they were just like me, just other guys who got called and who were trying to figure out what that meant. And then putting it into practice. Because we probably all felt a little bit like St. Paul talks about in that second reading today. Who did God call? God called the foolish and the weak and the little ones of this earth. That's who God is calling. Because that way we know for sure it's God. Because then God is doing the acting. That God takes our weaknesses and our struggles and our strengths and puts it all together and makes it work and makes God come to life in the midst of the community. So I really enjoyed, once I started studying theology and I enjoyed ministry, and people kept pointing that out, that you would be a good priest. Even thinking, still, you got the wrong guy. I think I was right up to ordination. Shortly before ordination, you have to write this letter in your own hand saying, I understand what I'm getting into. I understand the promises. I have my faculties. I have my mind. I'm not being forced to do this. See, I'm writing it with my own hand here. I'm sure that's on file somewhere at the chancery in case they ever quit. They say, hey, you wrote this letter. You said you knew what you were getting into. It is God's doing, not ours, God's. But God works through the church. God works through you and me. That's how we feel the call mostly today. And that's how we get qualified, is through that interaction. Because one of the problems of life is that the person we know least in this world is us. We know each other. I can see you. I can observe you. I hear you. But I don't see me. I only see me from the inside. I can't see how I am from your perspective. I grow through relationships. We all do. That's how we learn about ourselves, is through the eyes of another. They tell us who we are and what we're like. They help us to be qualified. So Jesus invites all of us into that, some of us into specialized areas. This weekend, we're participating in what's called Called by Name. Get the right program here. So there are cards in the pews for you to identify young men and young women who you think are called, who you think would be good at ministry or good at priesthood. So there are different colored cards in the pew for you to put the name of somebody from the parish, or maybe they're not from the parish, but you think they should be identified. Then what we're going to do is they'll get a letter from me, and they'll get a letter from the Archbishop, and just saying, others see you as somebody special, as somebody maybe who is called. And if they're like me, they're gonna say, wrong. Wrong guy, wrong woman. Nope, somebody misidentified me. That's not me. But the worst that could happen is they feel honored, right? That somebody noticed them and said, hey, you should think about this. Because then the rest of the process begins, called and then qualified, by putting it into practice, by teaching it, by seeing if this truly belongs to me. I always think in the Beatitudes today that we hear in the gospel, that word blessed is a tough one to understand. Because you think, really, are those blessed? What does that mean to be blessed? And other translations have it as happy. Happy are the sorrowing. What? That doesn't make any sense. Happy are the sorrowing, or blessed are the sorrowing, or blessed are peacemakers. If I understand blessing correctly, what we're asking for when I bless you is that I'm wanting God to be there with you. That's what a blessing is. And so if you're blessed in those areas, then that means God is there. So when you're poor in spirit, God's there. When you're struggling for justice, God's there. When you're a peacemaker, God's there. All those Beatitudes, blessed is simply saying God's with you in that. And that really is what we learn when we're being qualified, is that's not me doing it. It's God doing it. I just learned to let God work through me, as all of us do as his disciples. Trust that. Trust that God is there working through you. And that the more you do that, the more you feel his presence in you and alive in you, so that others will say, not just that you're called, but in you, I see Jesus. And that's what our world needs. Flesh and blood people who make Jesus real for us. Called, qualified. and blessed.